Welcome in, friends. Happy 4th of July week for all of us here in the United States. And thank you to each and every one of you who join us internationally. And of course, all you who always join us and support us here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, and we're doing a very special free agency NBA breakdown here on Mercado Airwaves on Sports from the Couch. Before we get to that, make sure you guys follow us on all these awesome places right over here. You guys can see it. You can follow us all over the socials. It really helps us out. And we hope you're joining us here live on YouTube where we're doing a video version of this. And if all you who have been watching us on YouTube or on Facebook are noticing a different section of the Mercado Airwave Studios, the TGM Studios, this is the Good Brothers section of the studio. You can see we have a Chewbacca thing right there. Oh, you guys can't see it in the camera, but we have a Chewbacca sign right here, Batman and Robin vintage thing. Right over here next to the Star Wars, we actually have an Iron Man that's kind of the same. This is actually metal plated right there. We have a big Batman poster that I got from my godson. We have a lot of cool stuff that one of these days we'll do a video to show you when. I know the white wall is kind of a pain in the butt, but we're working on it, and as it gets on and on and on, it'll get better and better and better. But that is not why you called. You called because you want to talk a little bit of sports, and that is exactly what we're going to do for you guys. Let's get into it. The first thing we want to break down is the major news that we now know that the Brooklyn Nets have pretty much taken over the Eastern Conference as it is, with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving both signing with Brooklyn. Now, Kevin Durant obviously is going to be out for the first year with that Achilles injury. And, Kyrie Irving, here's the thing about Kyrie. I know how good of a point guard he is, obviously. He's one of the top 15 players in the NBA, probably. And we'll go through that list again as the offseason goes through. And you know how I feel about the top 15, especially been following us here on Sports from the Couch on Mercado Airwaves, which, by the way, thank you. I love a top 15 player. That is the difference between winning an NBA championship. Hell, it's probably need to be a top 10 player if you want to crack and win the Larry O'Brien trophy. But sure enough, I think Brooklyn made the right amount of moves. I called Kemba going to Boston. I think it made the right amount of sense. Now, with them losing Al Horford and obviously Kyrie leaving, I wonder how much of this has to do with Brad Stevens. And I wonder how much they fell, especially with all their assets. They didn't want to get rid of Brown. They didn't want to get rid of Tatum. Like, they stood pat and they didn't get anybody. And obviously Anthony Davis ending up in the Lakers has really shaken up a lot of people's plans. And it's really interesting to see where Boston goes from here with a lineup of Kemba, with Brown. They're going to lose Smart. They're gonna have Tatum. They're gonna have Gordon Hayward to see how he comes back from that injury, a horrible injury. And it took Paul George, who had a similar injury, a little while to come back. So it'll be interesting that way. What else we got? Klay Thompson getting a deal too. I mean, that would make the most amount of sense. I mean, I don't think Golden State was ever gonna really let Klay leave. So that one makes sense. Kristaps Porzingis again. You knew after Dallas made that trade with New York, and New York coming out with egg in their face. I mean, really, they have to land Kawhi Leonard. I was thinking of Kyrie Irving. Kawhi Leonard. You got to think about this now. And I know you've heard it all over it, but this is coming from just a mind in Chicago. Somebody who watches sports, who doesn't really have like these allegiances against other teams. Like, I like the teams I root for, and then I talk about the rest, right? New York completely whiffed, and they should be embarrassed. They made all these moves, and it all comes down to the infrastructure of that organization. And here's the thing. I complain a lot about the Chicago Bulls. Bulls fans, you know that. And you know what? Actually, stick around to the end of this episode. We're going to replay our interview with 670 The Score, Bulls insider, executive producer of the Lawrence Holmes Show, Tony Gill. He's one of the best in the business when it comes to sports, especially the NBA. We talked about a lot of cool things. So stick around. We're going to replay that interview at the end of this show. But I think the Knicks really missed out. You traded Porzingis, and you didn't land Zion. You were assuming you were going to land Zion. You didn't land KD. A lot of it came down to your owner. A lot of it came down to this report that you didn't offer KD a max deal. There was a lot of weird smoke and stinky around the New York Knicks. And if you're a Knicks fan, I could see why you're upset. And then, on top of it, the Brooklyn Nets outshined you, and for years to come. And here's the thing. If the Brooklyn Nets win an NBA Finals before the New York Knicks, some hell is going to have to be raised. I'm talking about legit. They got to get new ownership. They got to just tear down MSG. Like, it is crazy to think that the Brooklyn Nets are legitimately not just a championship contender, but New York's team. And I know the boroughs are different. I love New York. I've been to New York, but don't get it twisted. Like that fans are fickle. Kids are fickle. Patrick Ewing's a long time ago. You know, when I was a teenager, Amari Stoudemire and Carmelo Anthony were the superstars of the Knicks. That was a long time ago already. I'm almost 30. So, you know, we'll see what the Knicks did. Superstar Jimmy Butler, how about this? Going to the Miami Heat. I don't think he wants to win championships if he goes to Miami. But if you're Jimmy, and knowing what we know now from Chicago, and seeing what happened in Minnesota, and what's happened in Philadelphia, and everything online, and just working out with Mark Wahlberg, and working out in LA, and becoming a superstar, and getting in between teammates, and all this nonsense, Miami's the perfect fit for him. It really is. Showtime Jimmy in South Beach. And I'm not mad at Jimmy. Look he earned that money. He played the game. And while everybody else was playing checkers, he was playing chess, like it or not. That's the truth about Jimmy Butler. And it worked out for him. It really did. So Jimmy gets that big deal. Tobias Harris staying with the Sixers, but we just saw today that Bobai, I forget, is that how you pronounce his name? The guy who gets murked in John Wick 3, he's now with the Mavericks. So, Mark Cuban loves international white players. That's his thing. Chris Middleton getting a nice max deal with the Milwaukee Bucks. And, that's the team you got to look at now, right? Because the NBA is all about disgruntled stars. Does Giannis cash in and win an NBA Finals before he's disgruntled? I don't know. Vujovic gets a big deal with the Magic staying at home. And again, it's a nice move for him. He gets paid. They have their guy. And, cool 7th, 8th seed. It's not going to go anywhere. So pretty interesting stuff. But again, you see at the very top, Kawhi Leonard, not signed. And as we're recording this right now, there's no news. And there's so many reports. Here's the interesting about Kawhi, right? What reports are real, what are fake? And I know that's hard about all media, not just sports, but all media when it comes to journalism and when it comes to scoops and rumors and what's true and what's not and all that. But he's the type of dude that really doesn't seem like he wants his info and his life out there. So who's telling people that it's come down to the Clippers, the Lakers, or Toronto? Who's telling people that he wants to keep it quiet? Maybe he's so secretive he hasn't even told people to keep it secretive. And I know that's going down a weird rabbit hole, but think about that. Like, I don't think it's so obvious that we have any answer of what Kawhi is going to do. I think Kawhi and maybe one other person, maybe two people, know what he's going to do. And I think at the end of it, we're all going to be just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Which probably means the Clippers. I know a lot of people think it's going to be the Lakers because it's the Lakers. But, man, I think the league, and look, I don't care about super teams. It is what it is. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. There's no guarantee you're going to win a final. All that nonsense. LeBron is older, and Davis, while he's had a lot of little injuries, has been injured a lot, and he's going to be under different pressure. So it's no guarantee. There's no guarantees for what's going to happen in L.A., nor in Brooklyn, but much more with the Lakers. So I don't think there's any guarantee that Kawhi's dying to go there. So, I think him going to the Clippers just makes the league have so much more parity. And you can't put your money on who's going to win the finals. You can't say it's Brooklyn this year. You could say maybe the Lakers this year, but this is a different era of basketball because LeBron is older. He has so many miles under his tires. So you can't just guarantee that the Lakers are going to cruise through anything. And as far as I'm concerned, Steph Curry and Draymond Green are still playing in Golden State. And they did just get D'Angelo Russell, right? So, there's firepower in the Western Conference. James Harden isn't going anywhere. The Oklahoma City Thunder still have 2 All-Stars. There's a lot. Don't snooze on Portland or Denver or Utah. That's my point. It's so deep. There's no guarantees anywhere. But if you listen to ESPN or Fox or CBS, they're going to tell you that it's a two-team race. But I tell you this, if Kawhi ends up with the Clippers, there is 8 legitimate final contenders and 15 teams that can make noise. The entire playoffs, essentially. And it's crazy to think that that's where we're at right now in the NBA. But it's why I love the sport. And it's why people love the NFL, because everybody has a chance. There's superstars everywhere. You have to watch the games. You have to be invested. If the NBA does lower its NBA season to 56, 60-something games, even better. Less games, more attention to them, and a little bit more emphasis on the playoffs. That's what I think. But this wasn't the only list of free agencies. There's just a top 10. We can actually keep going. Let me pull up number 2. So we saw D'Angelo Russell with the now going with the Warriors, and a lot of people are saying that's a move for the future. Maybe they don't even keep him after this year, but it's something to hold on to. Malcolm Brogdon ended up going to the Pacers. This is interesting for all you Bulls fans, because a lot of people thought that's who they were going to go after, and we'll get into who the Bulls did end up getting besides a free agency. But JJ Redick ends up with New Orleans. I'm really liking what the Pelicans are doing. We haven't even mentioned that. 2 years from now, the Pelicans are going to be a team to make noise. Al Horford going to the 76ers. Leaving Boston to go to Philly. Play with Joel Embiid. Like, it's Ben Simmons. Tobias Harris. That's a good team. Philly is still a good team. And obviously, now you have Julius Randle going to the Knicks, and that's the biggest free agent of 2019-2020. Sorry, Knicks fans. Very sorry. Brook Lopez staying with the Bucks, and so does Robin Lopez. So the Lopez brothers are going to be playing together in Milwaukee. That's pretty fun. DeAndre Jordan joining the Brooklyn Nets. Apparently, he's really tight with Kevin Durant. So again, your starting lineup probably next year is DeAndre Jordan and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. So it's not that bad. And Harrison Barnes sticking around in Sacramento. So an interesting there. Before we get out of this list, look at that. DeMarcus Cousins, still a free agent, 28 years old, center. I remember 3 or 4 years ago how bad I wanted him on the Bulls. And the NBA has just gone so far away from that position and from the way he plays. And he's still so dynamic, still so good. And I think he can give something to somebody. But watch him end up in San Antonio. You know, a team like that wants to win. It's going to give him a veteran minimum and thinks they could do something with him. It's really interesting. And finally, to wrap up the top 30 free agents, we have it right here. Morris, who's probably going to leave Boston. Patrick Beverley sticking with the Clippers. I thought the Bulls were going to go after him, but he got a nice $40 million deal. Nikola Mirotic going back to Spain. Ain't that about it? Bulls fans, this is what I've been talking about, though. Bulls fans, I'm going to go on a little rant right here. Sitting on your assets. I think the great Mark Silverman says that on ESPN 1000 here in Chicago. This Bulls team always overvalues their players. They're too untouchable. What? Don't give us Kobe Bryant. You want Luol Deng? Excuse me? They had that mindset that Luol Deng was too valuable to trade for Kobe Bryant. This Bulls team and front office overvalues himself so much. And it happens over and over and over again. And here's a perfect example, Nikola Mirotic. They put all the eggs in that basket, and it surely worked out for them. Especially last year when he helped you, or didn't help you, end up with the 7th overall pick when you were trying to tank last season. That's just a different conversation. Terry Rozier, we were talking about Tatum and Brown, but Terry Rozier ends up in Charlotte, essentially replacing Kemba Walker. Trevor Ariza going to the Kings. Let's see some other ones. Ricky Rubio, I thought he was going to end up with Chicago, but he is a Phoenix Sun, and this is one kind of, we're bringing it full circle for all you Bulls fans, and we'll lead into Tony Gill's interview that we had with him from 670 The Score. He's a Bulls insider. He is also the executive producer of the Lawrence Holmes Show. He's the host of the No Zones podcast that you get on the radio.com app on 670 The Score. He's one of the best that we have in the city. Thaddeus Young is coming to Chicago, and I've heard some great things about Thaddeus Young. He's a grinder. He's a pro's pro. And I think this is the type of veteran leadership that this team needs to start having. And it's like I told Tony that you'll hear in the interview if you missed it. I like a lot of pieces of this Bulls team. I really do. And we actually just found out that Wendell Carter is actually having surgery in his abdomen. So that's going to push back his development. But I like a lot of pieces on this team. I just don't trust the front office or that coaching staff to develop, to keep up with today's NBA. And even if they did have a better second half after a mutiny that did happen, with this Bulls team, they did overcome that. But is that enough to make them win 12 games to get to 40 wins? That's what a lot of people believe. Is Thaddeus Young that good to bring you there? And it brings us up to our next point. Not only is it Thaddeus Young, go ahead and get that. The Bulls did make a trade, and they got themselves a brand new point guard. I'll bring this up for you guys right here. All right. This is from Adrian Wojnarowski's. The Bulls acquire Wizards guard Tomas Satoransky. Now, Satoransky is about 6'7". They played him a lot at the 3, and here's the thing. He says he's a point guard, so he'll probably start over Kobe White. And they just re-signed Ryan Arcidiacono to a deal, so Chris Dunn has to be traded. Like, that's a guarantee. But is Satoransky, Kobe White, and Thaddeus Young enough to win 20 more games to get you to that 7th or 8th seed? I don't think so. I mean, I think they're good moves. They're professionals. They're veterans. But I don't think it's anything near what you would say is adequate enough to win 20 games. 20 more games. That's a lot in the NBA. Now, maybe if they all stay healthy and they all actually go for wins opposed to tanking last year, and maybe, but to guarantee it, to feel so optimistic about it, I think it's a little strange. But for you Bulls fans, yeah, I mean, they have kind of solidified their roster, so now it comes down to what do you do with Chris Dunn? But it's interesting. I like Satoransky. I like Thaddeus Young. I like those moves, but it's what the Bulls always do. They get a nice team together. It's just not going to win you a final. But Tony Gill and I actually talk about that. So why don't we get ready and I'll load that up for you guys. But thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Sports from the Couch. We talked everything about the NBA free agency, and we will be right here when Kawhi Leonard finally signs with a team. But make sure you're following us all over the network. I'm on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. You can follow the good brother himself at Mercado21 Alex on Twitter, and the lovely Nicole Mancha at Typing When Tipsy. We're all on Instagram. I'm at Mike Mercado 2333. He's at Mercado 2121, and the lovely Nicole Mancha is at Typing When Tipsy. And you can follow our true crime show at Murder Mysteries and More. We have a pop culture show, fans. You can check that out on Twitter at Good Brothers Pod. And what else do we have? We have a Patreon that you get our interviews ad-free and before anybody else with athletes and celebrities. And it's a great list, guys. I promise you should actually check it out. Patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Download, like, rate, review, and share us anywhere you get your favorite podcasts, at iTunes, SoundCloud, anywhere it's at. Just please make sure you guys give us 5 stars. But that's enough jibber jabber. Enjoy your 4th of July. We will have Tony Gill take us home. Here is my interview with ESPN, with 670 The Score's Bulls insider, executive producer of the Lawrence Home Show from noon to 2, Monday through Friday on The Score. He's also the host of the No Zones podcast and the executive producer of Behind the Headlines with Julie DeCaro. Enjoy my interview with Tony Gill. Have a happy and safe 4th of July, friends. What is going on, friends? Welcome into Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. Today, we are joined by special guest from 670 The Score. He is the executive producer of the Lawrence Home Show from noon to 2, Monday through Friday on 670 The Score. He is also the host of the No Zones podcast. He is the executive producer of Behind the Headlines with Julie DeCaro. He is friend of the show, Tony Gill. We talk about the fallout of the Bulls draft, everything of the NBA free agency, and so much more. But before we get to Tony, here's a quick message. What's up, friends? Mike here from Mercado Airwaves. If you missed any one of our past interviews with amazing guests like future Hall of Famer and pound for pound best fighter in the world, UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson,
another day at the office, I get to go out there and test my skill.
To award-winning producer, director, and actor Orlando Jones. Orlando, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, sir. I'm good, brother. How you doing?
And all the other interesting guests we've had on. Joining us today is director and writer David Ferrier.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you having me on the show.
MMA legend Chael Sonnen joins us today.
Keep listening to your show. This is great. Thanks, my friend.
Just subscribe to us on iTunes at Mercado Airwaves. And while you're there, please like, review, and rate us, friends. It helps so much. We also have a Patreon for any to support the show. Just visit us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and see how you can get all of our interviews ad-free and before anyone else, and how you can get your business or company spotlighted on the show. Follow us on Twitter at mmercado2333. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/MikeMercado2333. And if you would like to see what we're up to behind the scenes, follow us on Instagram, MikeMercado2333. Thanks for listening and all the support. Thank you for keeping it with us. Here's our interview with Bulls insider Tony Gill from 670 The Score. Enjoy. What's going on, Tony? How you doing? Welcome back to the show, man. I go figure. We were supposed to have an off season, and it's been everything but off.
Yeah, it's been a wild NBA offseason. I was expecting a little bit of a break with no zones, but because of the way the NBA is set up, it's not really a break.
Well, it's funny because a little inside baseball. When that happens, like, how are you planning to produce the rest of the off season and the rest of the summer? Because it seems like the off season goes off season. There really only is like 2 weeks off. Do you have to kind of plan around that, or are you just kind of going with the flow because of it is a very unique off season?
I just go with the flow. Depending on what's going on in the news and the topics of that week or so, I usually like to spread it out a bit with all my different responsibilities. When I'm planning another episode for No Zones or something like that, I make sure that I'm paying attention to what's going on, take note of it. Is it enough to talk about it in a from 40 minutes to an hour or so? And if it is, boom, set it up. Do I need any guests? If I do, call them up, or for somebody to come in studio with me to discuss, set that up. Yeah, I take into account all the different details that goes into planning a show and the news. And make sure I'm on point with everything. And
Tony is literally one of the best guys that we have, not only in Chicago radio, but in general, this podcast and media world. Tony is, for all you who want to know a little bit, who love the behind the curtain stuff, he's one of the best dudes. He covers the teams, and he produces some of the best. I mean, Lawrence Holmes from noon to 2 might be the best radio show in Chicago right now. And all those nighttime listeners, all those night owls that kind of were listening to them over the last few years, getting this in the mid-afternoon has been awesome. So you guys all need to check that out. But even more importantly, and a shout out to our guy Lawrence, but more importantly, you and our guy Rick were on No Zones just a few days ago that you guys could get on 670thescore.com, the radio app, and it's a great listen about the NBA, but also what the Bulls did this past week with the draft. And Tony, it's interesting. Last time we had you on, we were really high on thinking maybe John Morant, maybe Zion. And for them to fall to 7, like, before we get into the pick, what did you think? Like, everybody saw the funny video that you had on social media, but, kind of when the dust settled, what was your initial thought of that pick?
When the lottery came down and the Bulls turned up, they had 7. My initial feeling was this was a missed opportunity to change the fortunes and trajectory of the Bulls for the next 10 years. The top 2 players in this draft, John Morant and Zion Williamson, have the potential to change your franchise in a dramatic fashion, and the Bulls didn't get that opportunity because they were at 7. I'm not saying that there isn't potential in any other of the other draftees, but I felt comfortable enough to say Zion Williamson and John Morant could change your franchise in a very, very positive way. And the Bulls missed out. So it was disappointing, also being a Bulls fan, not only covering the team, but also still being a fan of the team and want the team to do well and have good things. And it was just unfortunate that they ended up with 7. But, that's why it's called the lottery.
With that, they ended up kind of cashing in on Kobe White. And it was interesting because as it was going down, it almost felt, and you know how I feel about this front office. I think most of us kind of feel the same about this front office. But what was interesting to me was almost it literally falling in their lap after all the things were said and done, after all the craziness of New Orleans and Memphis getting 1 and 2, the Lakers and Anthony Davis, it kind of felt like other than the 2 guys that you really wanted, the Bulls almost failed upwards. Like, they got the guy they kind of wanted. I didn't see anybody else on the board that they could kind of sell to the public. I feel like this was the perfect kind of a player for this front office to get out there, get in front of the media, and really drive home that this is who they wanted, this fits their need. And it just so happened to actually be at point guard. But, I mean, am I off on that, just kind of thinking they kind of failed upwards in getting Kobe at 7?
They certainly, didn't have to move up. I mean, going into the draft, you saw all this movement, Minnesota moving up, Atlanta moving up, and you thought at least Minnesota they were gonna take one of those point guards. The Lakers that they were gonna take before they moved out. Before they traded the pick, you thought the Lakers were going to take a point guard. They ended up trading that to New Orleans, and New Orleans ended up trading that pick. But it felt like Jarrett Culver was going to be the guy at 7 left on the board for the Bulls to take. And I would have had no problem with that as well. I mean, after 1 and 2, I mean, and maybe 3 if you want to add R.J. Barrett in there. The draft in terms of potential talent seemed typically the same bunch. Like it was all random after that. Throughout the draft. So them ended up with Kobe White, where the worst case scenario for the Bulls would have been trying to trade up to take one of those point guards, giving away assets to move up to take Darius Garland or Kobe White, whichever one they had higher on their draft board, would have been horrible for the Bulls because they can't afford to just give away assets, especially in this draft, which is particularly weak. So that would have been the worst-case scenario. It didn't happen. Kobe fell to the Bulls, and you're right. By happenstance, they didn't have the opportunity to fail because it landed right in their lap.
And before we go on to what could be more success or failure, depending on your view of what they might be doing in the free agency, let me run this by you. So I love Zion, and I love what John brings to the NBA. There's going to be a learning curve. There's growing pains. We all know that. We all know the cliches. But you know what? It's funny. I have a feeling that the pro's pro, the guy who's going to have the longest career, make the most amount of money over time, is R.J. Barrett. And the fact that he's going to go to the Knicks, who other than him, I mean, really don't. He is the foundation. He's the skeleton. Is it possible, from what you've seen and kind of talking around the locker rooms, is it going to be possible for somebody like RJ at the right situation, could be a superstar? Is he going to be able to flourish in Madison Square Garden? Do you think that he has the infrastructure for that to happen?
He has the potential to do it, but when you mean like longest career, potential to make the most money, I mean, Vince Carter is still playing. The best of his generation. He's just playing a long time. But I mean, if RJ is set up correctly, and I like David Fizdale, I think he's a good coach. I'm actually kind of rooting for the Knicks to succeed, because I do like David Fizdale, and I do think he's a good coach, and I want him to have the pieces necessary to prove that he can coach at a high level. Unfortunately, the owner is still Dolan, and he still has a reputation around the league and amongst fans, being a bad CEO of that organization. But yeah. At this point, I will give R.J. Barrett the benefit of the doubt to say he can do something great in New York. But, I mean, he's going to need some help. It doesn't look like in free agency New York is going to be taken that seriously. It seems like they may just have to wait out this free agent year, go into the lottery next year because they will be bad if they don't get a star or a max guy there. They will be in the lottery again, and then try it again. Keep that space open. If they're smart, they won't spend the money because they have it this season. If nobody that you like is there and they don't come to the Knicks, if they just stay put, wait it out, let these guys grow. I mean, they still got some young talent, Dennis Smith Jr., Alonzo Trier. They got pieces to kind of feel out and work out to see what they have. They don't have to spend, the money just because they have it. So yeah, I'll give you that. Maybe R.J. Barrett can become a superstar.
And it's going to be interesting kind of seeing how all the pieces fall into this. And I highly suggest, guys, check out the newest episodes of No Zones. Rick Camp was on it. You can check it out over at 670score.com. It's on the radio app. Friend of the show, Tony Gill, is joining us today. Follow him on Twitter at TonyGill670. He's on all that and all the socials, so please follow our guy there. He's the executive producer of the Lawrence Holmes Show from noon to 2 on 670. And you're also the EP of Behind the Headlines with Julie, which is amazing. The Michael Jordan's father case was phenomenal work. I can't wait when you guys announce. I think you said on the show in July you're announcing the next season, right?
Yeah, at the end of July we're going to announce the topic that we're doing for season 2 of Behind the Headlines. I mean, it's another fantastic story I don't want to give too much away, but I'll drop. It's another basketball topic, but it's crazy interesting, and I think people are going to like it. And I think a lot of people missed this story because it was kind of like, a passerby. You hear the name of the person that we're doing this series on, you're going to be like, whoa, wow, I forgot about that. And if you haven't heard about it, trust me, it's super interesting, almost just as interesting as the James Jordan case, but I don't think, not quite, but it's still very, very intriguing.
People behind it with you and Julie and that whole staff. You guys do amazing work, and this is one of the reasons why you're not only one of my favorite guests, but one of the favorite people that we have in our media right now. And I want to kind of this is what's been bugging me, Tony. All right, about the Bulls. They have a lot of assets. They have a lot of pieces. I got to be honest with you. I like a lot of the guys on this team. Obviously not enough to say, like you guys were mentioning on the podcast, 20-plus more wins to get to the playoff. But I like some of the pieces on this staff. I like the work I'm seeing from Zach and his dad on social media. I think Chris Dunn is going to have some things to answer, some critics to answer, and maybe that's the fire under his ass, whether it's here in Chicago or somewhere else. There's pieces on here. But the grand scheme of all this, Tony, I don't understand. They're not any closer to winning a title. They're not any closer to bringing in a star free agent. Where are we? Are they the definition of NBA hell? What is the goal here? I mean, we've saw what Toronto could do, the NBA champions. They developed, they scouted, and they brought in a top-tier guy. The blueprint is there. What are the Bulls doing? What is all this leading to?
Well, I'm not going to say they're NBA hell. If all of their core guys were seasoned veterans and they were coming back, that's NBA hell. That talent has capped off. These guys are still young. They're still, in their late teens, early 20s. The majority of the guys that you think are going to stick around, they're really, really young. And they haven't played a whole lot of games together. So we still don't know the amount of upside that this group has just yet. And not knowing is a good thing at this point. Because you can still go out there and see what you have, see if this group can go on together. Can they compete? Can they get along and stuff like that? Can they respond well to Jim Boylan's style of coaching for the next 3 seasons that he signed for? I mean, there's still stuff that we don't know about this group yet because of the youth on this team. So they're not an NBA hell. So, I mean, everybody wants to win a championship, as soon as possible. But in my just one season, of covering a basketball team and getting, the firsthand knowledge, it takes a long time championship. You look at how Golden State built what they built. That was years of drafting, like 3 consecutive hits with Steph, Clay, and Draymond. That took a while. And then it took a year, a couple years after that for them to, kind of figure it out between themselves. So that's 4 years minimum right there. So it's going to take a while, and fans have to realize that it's going to take a while. And I get it. Trust me. With Garpax, I know people are done. I'm done with it. But the matter of fact is they're still here, and they're not going to get fired. So once you get past that, it's like, okay, what is the next step for them? What can they do specifically, Gar Forman and John Paxson, to get them close to winning championships? Well, you draft well, and you scout well, and you develop. Now, they drafted relatively well. We'll give them that. I mean, Jimmy Butler, they made some decent, picks. Now it's about development. The guys that they have now going forward, they need to make sure that, one, they're healthy, they're building up their bodies, their training staff is on point, because this team, with these guys, they have injury issues. Laurie Marketing, Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine. You can call them, some of them were freakish, kind of out of the blue injuries, but still, injuries that takes away time from them meshing together on the basketball court. That's an issue. But yeah, it's going to take a while for them to win a championship. We wanted to rebuild, even though it's taking a little bit longer than we thought it was going to be. I think we got to give them time to see if they have an upcoming star or if this works to woo maybe another potential star down the road and say, oh, wow, look what the Bulls have. They got Laurie Markkinen and Zach LaVine and Kobe White. And, that's all it takes. All it takes is, a couple good seasons of people looking at the Bulls and say they have a really nice young core. All they need is a superstar to pair with them, and they'll be just fine. And sometimes that's all it takes.
And you know what, Tony? The NBA is one of those rare sports where the growth is not only just in development, and it is true the development is so key, especially with such young guys, but you also have to learn in the playoffs. Think about how many times DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry got bounced in the playoffs. Think about how many times Milwaukee was a one-and-done team. You have to develop and learn to lose, get some battle scars. The NBA is a weird league like that. Star players get their time in the sun. Different eras go through the league. I think it's very poignant for you to also bring up that even if they get all their pieces, we saw during the Derrick years, you got to earn it. You got to get to it, and you got to be fortunate enough to have the health and, your front office being creative enough to make sure you have the depth and the talent around you. I think that's a great point that I think a lot of fans lose sight of,
Yeah, no, and trust me, I get why they lose sight of that, because they have been annoying. Mark Foreman and John Paxson have been extremely annoying on building this team and getting it to championship contention. But they're here. They're not going to get fired anytime soon.
Yep.
Like, anytime soon. We're stuck with them. If you are a Bulls fan, this is your vice president of basketball ops, and this is your GM. So you're just going to have to go on for the ride. Hopefully that these guys can develop. They turn into assets, and then maybe you're in a Toronto situation where you have enough assets to flip, because the superstars, they're going to continue to be angry with, where they are. Somebody's going to be upset. You want to be in the right spot in terms of cap flexibility and the amount of assets and picks that you have to be able to flip what you have, because they're not good at free agency. So they're not going to be able to woo these guys just off the market. So you're going to have to be ready at a moment's notice when Anthony Davis or, LeBron, or not saying LeBron's going to be mad, but those people of that ilk, when they are ready to be traded for, that you're in that in those calls and in those rooms when it's time to flip some of these assets, and don't get too attached to them. Be ready to move on to take that risk for that superstar, like Usai Ujiri did with the Toronto Raptors and Kawhi Leonard.
And it's interesting that at the end of it, it is going to be the same front office that I just crapped on was the organization that put themselves in the right position when they got Carlos Boozer, because they put themselves in the position to try to get Dwayne Wade, LeBron, or Chris Bosh. So they have at times been able to do it. It just it's been a long time, and they rest on their laurels of that time way too much, talking about, well, if Derek's injury wasn't this or Derek injuries wasn't that was almost 10 years ago. So I think they put their hat on that too much. But you're right, they have done it, and that's what it takes. Tony, I've taken a lot of your time, so before we get out of here, brother, I know you've had a busy days behind the curtain. Tony's also one of the guys behind Cubs Baseball on 670 Discord to make sure it gets to all you lovely people, and he actually joined us right after the game. So shout out to our guy Tony. But Tony, we'll do two quick ones, all right? A fun one, but we'll stay with the NBA on the first one. If anybody wants any free agent stuff, we'll talk to Tony in a few months about that. We don't need to bug him. Check out the podcast. Him and Rick talked about that. Kobe White, tell me, what's the floor and what's the ceiling in your crystal ball? The Tony Gill crystal ball. What is the upside to Kobe, and what is the absolute worst case scenario that you can see as a legitimate possibilities at both ends?
Well, the upside is, you have a starter for the future of this franchise, where you don't have to worry about the point guard position for your team going forward for the next, 7 or 8 years, because that's how much control you have, over your first round picks, in today's game. So hopefully you have a guy that can spread the floor, that can run your offense properly, that can defend his position, because he's 6'5", he has a decent enough size to guard. He's very fast. He can maybe quick. He can keep up with these quicker point guards, in the NBA. Today is a dominant point guard game. You need to have a guy that can at least slow down, his opponent that he's facing, and be able to give his opponent a hard time, in guarding him. Chris Dunn couldn't do that. Guys didn't have to worry about, playing Chris Dunn, because he wasn't that great offensively. Wasn't a great three-point shooter. Didn't finish at the rim very well. Couldn't, get the offense going enough, and wasn't consistent in that aspect. So you're hoping that at least that you have a starter for the next 8 years for your team. Now, worst case scenario is you don't know what you have in Kobe White. You're in the lottery because of bad point guard play again this year, and now you have to make a decision on taking another point guard in next year's draft, which is actually a better draft for point guards going into next year. Now you have to make a decision of, now, if you can't get rid of Chris Dunn, you have Chris Dunn on the roster. They signed Ryan Arcidiacono, so you got him on the roster. And then you got Kobe White, who you drafted in the lottery at 7. And now you're going into another draft with the potential to take another point guard. So now you're stuck. So that's worst case scenario where you don't have any use for them. He can't defend. The game is too much for him. He gets overwhelmed, and you have to bring him off the bench. That's the worst case scenario because you wasted a lottery pick on a guy you thought that could be your starter for the next few years. Now you're stuck with him for the next few years. So that's worst case scenario for the Bulls.
Tony, that sounds all too real, my brother. That sounds like a horrible, legitimate reality. Tony, before we get you out of here, you're always awesome. You're super generous with your time here on the network, and you do all this work. But my brother, I got 2 things to tell you before we let you go. 1, oatmeal cookies are trash, and Game of Thrones, the final season, was amazing. What is wrong with you, bro?
2 opposite opinions of mine. Cookies are the most underrated of cookies. Like, it's so great. You've never had a hard oatmeal raisin cookie. They're always soft. They're always flavorful. I've never had a bad oatmeal cookie. I've had terrible chocolate chip cookies. The highs of that doesn't have. I can't take the risk of having a bad cookie. So I'm always going to go with something that I know is going to be good 100% of the time. And Game of Thrones, the pacing was absolutely horrible.
I agree with that.
Horrible. You can't tell that story and flesh it out in 6 episodes, 7 episodes. You can't do that. And then to hear the option of continuing the story past this season and at minimum do it in 10 episodes, and they were like, no, we're done with it. It's like it took our favorite show, and they said we're done with it. We have no use for it, even though it was HBO's biggest moneymaker. Like, that whole situation was done. I'm glad it's over. I did enjoy the ride, though. It's still a Hall of Fame great show, but they absolutely screwed us in that last season.
So it was Jordan in the Wizards jersey is what you're telling me?
Worse than that.
Oh, come on.
40 in Wizards, so I can't give him that.
Tony, you're the best, my guy. Thank you for everything. Executive producer of the Lawrence Holmes Show. Make sure you check him out from noon to 2 for these hot takes, guys, on 670 The Score on the radio app. He covers the Bulls, executive producer behind the headlines, The Amazing Show with Julie DeCaro, and, of course, No Zones. Check out the latest episode. Wow, bro, wow, with Rick Camp is all I have to say. Make sure you guys check out Tony Gill 670. Tony, you're the best, my brother. Thank you for everything, man.
Thanks, Mike. No problem, man. Anytime.
Enjoy our shows? Follow the Mercado Airways crew all over social media. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. On Instagram, Nicole is at Typing When Tipsy. Alex is at Mercado2121. Mike is at Mike Mercado2333. And our true crime show is at Murder Mysteries and More. And on Twitter, Nicole is at Typing When Tipsy. Alex is at Mercado21Alex. And Mike is at mmercado2333. You can follow the network at Mercado Airwaves. Follow our pop culture show on Twitter at Good Brothers Pod. Get us on the go by downloading our programs anywhere you get your favorite podcast, like iTunes, SoundCloud, Podbean, Stitcher, and other popular sites. Just search us at Mercado Airwaves. While you're at it, please like, rate, review, and share us with your friends. Visit us on YouTube.com/Mike Mercado2333. Click the subscribe and like button to get notified every time a new episode or interview is posted. Support Mercado Airwaves by visiting Patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home of our interviews with athletes and celebrities, which you can get ad-free and early before it's released to the public. Come play video games with us on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. Mercado Airwaves is powered by Munch Art Design. Like them on Facebook at Munch Art Design. Voiceover work on Mercado Airwaves is performed by Josh Fox.